Hi everybody. This is a video on the market mechanism. The market mechanism talks about how equilibrium is established in a market, what happens when the market is out of equilibrium. So the questions we're asking is, if there's an event in the market, does the event affect demand or supply? Is it an increase or decrease? And then what's the new equilibrium price and quantity? And then we can also study a little bit some government interventions that cause non-equilibrium market results. So here we're seeing an increase in demand, shift to the right. Shift to the right is always an increase and to the left is always a decrease, which means that every price consumers in the market are willing to buy more of the item. All right, so here was our original equilibrium at the intersection of the supply curve, which hasn't changed, and our D0, our original demand. And then you can see that there's a new equilibrium established at a higher price and a higher quantity. So answering the question, where are the new equilibrium price and quantity, the price has gone up to 4 and the quantity has increased from 30 to 40. So what's going on behind the scenes? What is the market mechanism? How do we get from here to here? Well, suppliers in the short run may not be able to really observe this increase in demand. So it's going to be market forces that move us from here to here. All right, suppose that suppliers don't change anything and keep their price at 3. What we have here is called a shortage, because at the price of 3, now with the new demand, suppliers are still willing to supply 30, but consumers want to buy something like 50. So we have a shortage of about 20 units in the market. Suppliers will see that their inventory is flying off the shelves. They say, hey, we should raise the price of this good. Price goes up from 3 to 4, and 4 is the price at which quantity supplied along the same supply curve is equal to the new quantity demanded at a price of 4. All right, so one important note here is that this increase in demand is not shifting supply, right? We're moving along the supply curve to a new point because of the higher demand. Suppliers have reduced inventory and can see that they can raise their prices. But this is not an actual shift in supply. So be careful how you talk about that. We get this increase in demand, which ultimately results in a higher price, higher quantity supplied, but does not actually shift the supply curve. Right, we could do the same thing for supply here. Again, we're seeing an increase in supply, a shift to the right. Our original equilibrium was at a price of 3 and a quantity of 30. Now, with the higher supply, producers are willing to supply a greater quantity at each given price. All right, if in the short run, price remained at 3, only 30 would be demanded, but 50 would be supplied. So the suppliers are going to realize this. They're going to say, hey, no one's really buying our product. We should decrease the price. Price goes down here from 2 to 3, 3 to 2 rather. Right, so again, we have this increase in supply. We're not shifting demand. Demand stays the same. We move to a new point along the demand curve, which is right here. Right, finally, we can do changes in both supply and demand. So here's an increase in demand and a decrease in supply. It helps to just draw these out. Here's our original equilibrium. We have an increase in demand. We have a decrease in supply. So a left shift in supply, rightward shift in demand. Our new intersection is up here. So we know for sure that we're seeing a higher price, but we don't know for sure whether the quantity is going to increase or decrease. It would depend on the magnitudes. Right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this video. Don't want it to get too long. This isn't going to be a main focus of the class, just something to review. If this is something you're really struggling with, please feel free to get a hold of me. I can show you just some more practice problems, information, and things like that. The main takeaways really from this are kind of more what happens when we get shifts in supply and demand in the market, and what could cause them. All right, so one last item, which is actually all the way at the end. I'll put out another video on elasticity, but we can have these government interventions in the market or price controls. We're going to talk more about government intervention later in the class and when we might and might not want it. But since we're talking about the market mechanism, here we see results that can result in non-equilibrium outcomes. So if the government were to put in a price ceiling, which is a legal maximum price, or a price floor, which is a legal minimum price, we can get to a result which is out of the equilibrium. So suppose we have this original equilibrium here, Q0 and P0. A government could institute a legal maximum price. So this would happen sometimes in a market for rent. Suppose the price of an apartment on average is too high. The government could come into the market and say, all right, you can't sell an apartment for more than this amount of money right here. All right, the result of that is that because of this intervention, the market can't correct itself to a new equilibrium. We don't have an actual shift in supply and demand. We just have a cap on price. So what happens is that at this lower price, we have a shortage of apartments because the producers of apartments in the market are only willing to supply Q1, but people demand Q2. So this excess demand creates a market shortage. All right, what would happen if the price ceiling was up here? You know, suppose the market equilibrium is $1,000 and the government says you can't sell apartments for more than $1,500. The price is already below that, so this is what we would call a non-binding price ceiling. And to be binding, the maximum price has to be below what the price already is, otherwise it doesn't make a difference in the market. Okay, what about a price floor, a legal minimum price? Sometimes this would be used to support crop prices. So the government says you can't sell for less than this particular price. This creates excess supply because at that higher price, fewer people are willing to demand a lower quantity. We have a higher quantity supplied at the higher price, so we're out of equilibrium here, and the market can't adjust because we're not seeing these changes in supply and demand. This is an outside intervention. So again, we'll talk a little bit more later in the class about what exactly happens in the market in terms of consumer and producer surplus when government intervenes.